Today we are going to review the August 2015 Algebra 1 Regents, questions 1 through 12. Okay, so let's see number 1. Given the graph of the line represented by the equation f of x equals negative 2 times x plus b, if b is increased by 4 units, the graph of the new line would be shifted 4 units in which direction? Right, up, left, or down? Well, we know that B is the y-intercept, and that is where the line crosses the y-axis. So, if we are increasing B, it's going to be increased on the y-axis, meaning that it's going to go up. Number 2, Rowan has $50 in a savings jar and is putting in $5 every week. Jonah has $10 in his own jar and is putting in $15 every week. Each of them plots his progress on a graph with the time on the horizontal axis. Okay. So we got time on the horizontal axis and the amount in the jar on the vertical axis. Okay, so I guess A, amount. Which statement about their graphs is true? Okay, well, so they're doing it by every week. They're both doing every week. So if we plot out, we could have 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And Rowan, well, let's do amounts as well. It looks like we need it to go by tens, right? $10 in his own jar. He's putting in 15. We have 50 every week, 50 starting out and 5 every week. So I'm going to do some lines here as well. And I'm going to increase this. So now each one of these green lines is going to be, let's say 10. So we got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and 90. And I'm going to pick some colors here. So Rowan is going to be in pink. So Rowan starts here at 50 and puts in $5 every week. So Rowan's not even going to go up a whole line here every week. So we have 5, 10, 15, 20, and that's about all I can get. So that's approximately what Rowan's is going to look like. Going up 5. And I'll do Jonah in blue. He's going to start down at 10. But he's putting in 15 every week. So that's a considerable amount more. So 10 and 5, 5 and 10, 10 and 5, and then 5 and 10. So that shows you a visual representation. Which statement about these graphs is true? So Rowan's graph has a steeper slope than Jonah. Rowan's graph always lies above Jonah's. Jonah's graph has a steeper slope than Rowan's, and Jonah's graph always lies above Rowan's. So we can eliminate the ones that say always lies above, because one does not always lie above the other. So if I kind of split this graph at this point of intersection, to the left, it's Rowan above Jonah, and to the right, it's Jonah above Rowan. Okay? And now they're comparing, for options 1 and 3, they're comparing the slope. So which one is steeper? So when we say steeper, we mean increasing faster. Right? And which one is increasing faster? It's going to be the one with 15, and that's Jonah. And based on the graph, you can see that as well. The graph physically looks steeper. You can think of it as like going up a hill. Which hill would be harder to go up? The one that is steeper, that's going up faster, that has more money being put in the jar every week. Okay, 3. To watch a varsity basketball game, spectators must buy a ticket at the door. The cost of an adult ticket, so an adult ticket is $3, and the cost of a student ticket is $1.50. If the number of adult tickets sold is represented by A, and the student tickets sold is by S, which expression represents the amount of money collected at the door from ticket sales? Okay, well, you're going to want to split this up into pieces, and this thinking will be very useful for part 4 of the Regent as well. You want to split it up. So first, how much money do they make off adults? Second, how much money do they make off of students? And then, how do we find the total from both? So let's start with the adults. If an adult ticket is $3, and they sell a adult ticket, since we don't know how many, how would we figure out how much that is in total? We would have to multiply the $3 times the number of adult tickets, right? So for example, if 5 adult tickets were sold, you would do 3 times 5, and they would make $15 off of adult tickets. So in this case, it would be 3A. And it's going to be similar for the student tickets, but instead, it's not $3 per student ticket, it's $1.50 per student ticket. So instead here, we're going to have to do 150S, 150 times S. And how would we find the total of both? We need to add them up. So we're just going to take 3A and 150S, and we're going to add them. And that is option 4. $3 times A plus 150 times S. Question 4. The graph of f of x is shown below. Which function could represent the graph of f of x? Okay, and this is going to be a great graphing calculator question. We can graph each one of these answer choices separately and see which one matches the graph given above, right? But what's going to be important to recognize is the zeros. So this 0, it's crossing the x-axis at -1, -2, -3, -4. So we know that one point needs to be -4, 0. We know another point needs to be -2, 0. And another point needs to be 1, 0. So when we check each and every one, we need to ensure that that's where these are crossing and it has the same shape. So you go to y equals, and now let's plug in each one individually. You got x plus 2 times x squared plus 3x minus 4. Okay, let's press graph. So our shape looks pretty good so far. Let's just double check that our zeros are at the exact same space. So we got a 0 at -4. We got a 0 at -2. And we need to make sure we also have a 0 at +1. And we do, right? So this is looking like 1 is the answer. Why don't we go ahead and check at least a couple more? but you should check it for each one. Okay, so this x plus 2 is going to become x minus 2. We're going to do the same thing. Okay, we can already see that this one is not the answer because there is 1 0 on the left side and 2 on the right side. And in our graph, there's 2 on the left and 1 on the right. So we don't even need to go in and check that. Right, this is plus 2, and this is plus 4 for the third one, graph. All right, and as we can see, this one just has a completely different shape. So it's definitely not option 3. Now let's check option 4. This one also has a completely different shape. So yes, 1 is definitely our answer. Let's move on to question 5. The cost of a pack of chewing gum in a vending machine is 75 cents. So let's see. Chewing gum will make G, and G equals 0.75 because we see 75 cents. The cost of a bottle of juice in the same vending machine is $1.25. So we could say J equals 125. Julia has $22 to spend on chewing gum and bottles of juice for her team, and she must buy 7 packs of chewing gum. If B represents the number of bottles of juice, which inequality represents the maximum number of bottles she can buy? Well, let's start with what we know, right? So we know that gum is 75 cents each. We know she needs to buy 7 packs of chewing gum. So how much money does she spend on gum? We need to multiply 75 cents times the number of packs, which is 7. So she's spending $5.25 on chewing gum. So how much does she have left over? 22 minus 5.25. We get 16.75. So she has $16.25 left over. Okay, based on that, how many bottles of juice can she buy? Well, looking at our answer choices, it looks like we don't even need to answer that. But what did we just do? We just multiplied gum times the 75 cents. So 7 times the 75 cents, which means we can get rid of any choice that doesn't multiply 7 times 75. So in this case, 1 doesn't and 2 doesn't. So they cannot be the answer. We need to determine if it's going to be 75 cents times 7 plus 125b. Is it going to be greater than 22 or is it going to be less than 22? Well, let's think. Can Julia spend more than $22 or does it have to be less? It's going to have to be less, right? Because if she spends more than the $22, then she's not going to have enough money. So you need to make sure you're picking greater than, which is number 3. Okay, and if you need a trick for how to remember which one is, we need to pick less than because she can't spend more than 22, which is option 4. And if you need a reminder for how to remember which one is less than and which one is greater than, take a look at your hands. This is going to be a terrible drawing, okay? But if you make an inequality symbol with your hands, right? So like if that's a finger, there's a nail there, right? There's some fingers behind it. There's a thumb. Okay, cool. Terrible, but it's okay. So if that's like your hand, this would be your left hand making this symbol, And this is going to look like a less than symbol, right? So your left hand makes a less than, and I'm not going to draw the right, but it's the same for the right. So left is less, and then the right is greater than. 6. Which graph represents the solution of y is less than or equal to x plus 3, and y is greater than or equal to negative 2x minus 2? Okay, so one thing that's true about all of these options is that all of the lines are solid, which is one of the first things I usually look for. We know they need to be solid because less than or equal to and greater than or equal to have solid lines. And if it was strictly less than or greater than, so without the equal to, it would have been a dotted line. Unfortunately, that doesn't help us here because all the lines are solid like they're supposed to be. Also, looking at these lines, all of the graphs have lines graphed in the same spot. So we know that the lines themselves are graphed correctly. What they're looking for is the shading. So for less than, when we have less than or equal to or less than, it doesn't matter here, we're going to be shading down. So we need to find the x plus 3 line and make sure it's shaded down. So in this case, that's going to be, and I'm going to just draw right over the line. In each example, it's going to be this green line. And we know that because this line is crossing the y-axis at positive 3. It has a less than symbol, so we need to make sure we're being shaded down. So looking at graph number 1, shading below the line or down from the line would be this way. So 1 is not being shaded down. 2 is, we can see below. 3 is, and 4 is not. Okay, let's do the other one. The other line now, which is negative 2x minus 2, is going to be the other line. And I don't need to show it in the two that are not answer choices now. So just these two. And this one has a greater than or equal to sign. So we know this needs to be shaded up. So looking at option number 2, above the pink line would go up this way. And we could see that 2 is not shaded above, but 3 up this way is. So in this case, your answer choice is going to be 3. Question 7. The country of Benin in West Africa has a population of 9.05 million people. The population is growing at a rate of 3.1% each year. Which function can be used to find the population 7 years from now? So this is going to use a formula that we say P equals I 1 plus or minus R to the T. Okay, and the P is going to be the population. The I is going to be the initial amount. R is going to be the rate. And T is going to be time. So we need to factor in all the information from this question now. So we could see that the initial amount is 9.05 million. We could see in every option, it's the same initial amount. So unfortunately, that's not going to help us. They've also written this in standard form, and that's fine. So we got 9.05, and if we do times 10 to the 6, that makes it million. Okay, and now we need 1 Now this plus or minus is going to be dependent So it's going to be plus if it's increasing, minus if it's decreasing. In this case, it says growing, so we know we need plus. And just there, we can eliminate two options because these are minus. So 1 and 4 are out. And now we need to add the rate, but we can't add it as is because this is 3.1%. We need to change the percent to a decimal, and you do that by dividing by 100. So put 3.1 in your calculator, divide by 100. Oh, that was only 10. 3.1 divided by 100. And you get 0.031. So plus 0.031. And by now we can get the answer because we see that 2 has 0.31, not 0.031. So our answer is 3. But if you had to finish it, it says 7 years, so your exponent would be 7. Also, when you are changing from a percent to a decimal, instead of dividing by 100, you can always just move your decimal. So in this case, the decimal is right after the 3. Move it to the left twice. Put your new decimal and fill in with zeros, so you can see the number would be 0.031. However you would like to figure that out. Question number 8. A typical cell phone plan has a fixed base fee that includes a certain amount of data and an overage charge for data used beyond the plan. A cell phone plan charges a base fee of $62. So that base fee is going to be a one-time fee. So only one time. And the overage charge is $30 per gigabyte. So they're going to charge $30 for every gigabyte above 2 gigabytes. So the 2 gigabytes is included in the one-time fee. But once you go over that, every gigabyte is going to cost you $30. So if C represents the cost and G represents the total number of gigabytes of data, which equation could represent the plan when more than 2 gigabytes is used? So first things, you should look for the answer choices that have 62 alone. And by alone, I mean no variable, right? Because this is not a varying rate. It's always going to be 62. In this case, that's 3 and 4 because it's not with any variable. In the other options, you'd have to distribute the 62 to both pieces, and in both of them, we're going to end up multiplying it by a variable. So not 1 or 2. Okay, and now the difference here is, should we be doing 2 minus the gigabytes, or should we be doing the gigabytes minus 2? Well, remember, G, in this example, it's going to be exceeding 2. So for example, let's say that they use 5 gigs. In the first option, we would be doing 2 minus 5, and we would be charging them for negative 3 gigs. And does it really make sense to charge somebody for a negative amount of gigs? No, not quite. So we need to make sure we're charging them for the positive amount, which in this case would be like 5 minus 2. That would give you 3, which you would then multiply by 30 and add on to the 62. So our answer choice here is 4. Question 9. 4 expressions are shown below. So the expression 4x squared minus 4x minus 120 is equivalent to which ones? Okay, and there's a few ways you can do this. So let's start by the graphing calculator. The graphing calculator is always a great way to do this. So start with 4, your original. So I'm starting here. 4x squared minus 4 x minus 120. And now in y2, you're going to put each option. So for the first one, we got 2 times 2x squared minus 2x minus 60. And now go to your table. And as we can see, each option, so we got like 0, 0, negative 40, negative 40, negative 72, negative 72. The y1 and y2 columns are equivalent, so 1 is an option. And by looking at it, we can see that. So like if we have 4x squared minus 4x minus 120, if we factor out the 2, we know that 4 times 2 will give us 4x squared. 2 times negative 2 will give us negative 4x, and 2 times negative 60 will give us negative 120, which is exactly this option here. Okay, go back to y equals, and now let's put in the other one. We got 4 parenthesis x squared minus x minus 30. We go to second graph. Same thing, y1 and y2 are equivalent. I'm going to erase this option choice now. Oh no, I'll leave it. But below it, for this one, it looks like we're factoring out a 4. So let's do the same thing we did with the other one. If we factor out a 4, when we distribute it back in, we still need x squared. We can get rid of the 4 from the second term, but we still need minus x. And positive 4 times negative 30 will bring us back to 120. So that's how you would do 2 by hand. Let's check 3. So we got 4 parenthesis x plus 6 times x minus 5. Second graph. Okay, so this time y1 and y2 are different, right? So because they're different, they're not the same. I'm going to go back to y equals, make sure I typed it in correctly. Plus 6 minus 5. Yeah, so it's not going to be 3. And knowing that it's not 3, we can automatically get rid of 4. And going back to the upper 2, we know that it's not 2, because it's not 2 and 4 only, because 1 is also an option. So we just need to figure out, is it only 1 and 2, or is it 1, 2, and now 4? So we go to y equals again, clear out y2, and put the new one in. 4x parenthesis x minus 1 minus 120. Second graph. They are equivalent again, y1 and y2, so it's going to be 4, meaning our answer choice is 3. And from this one, we should be able to actually see that again, because from x squared minus x, we can factor out, now let's do it from this one. From these two pieces, we can factor out a 4x. So when we do that, we get 4x parenthesis, we would still need the x and the negative 1, but we can't factor out a x from 120, so it would stay like this, which is this answer choice. But by all means, please use the graphing calculator. It is a great strategy, especially when time is a factor on these types of exams. Okay, question number 10. Last week, a candle store received $355.60 for selling 20 candles. Small candles sell for $10.98, so S equals 10.98. And large candles sell for $27.98. How many large candles did the store sell? Okay, so we know that the small candles represents 1098. We could say S, right? So 1098S plus 2798L for large. And it says that they sold $355.60 worth. So this is going to be equal to $355.60, right? But that's only talking about the money they received. We also know exactly how many candles they sold. They sold 20 candles. We just don't know if they were, like, how many were small or how many was large. But we know that the total is 20. And to find the total, we would simply add S small candles plus L large candles, and that will equal 20. And now, by writing it like this, we have a system of equations. And there's a few ways that we can solve this, but since, I'm going to look at this one down here, since S and L do not have coefficients or numbers in front, I'm going to solve this through substitution. What do I mean by that? So take S plus L and solve for one of these variables. So I'm going to solve for S, because why not? So I'm going to subtract L on both sides. And I'm going to get S, the L's canceled out on the left. And I'm going to get 20. 20 is positive. And L is now negative because we subtracted. So S equals negative L plus 20. And now that I know this, I know what S equals, I can substitute it back into the variable S here. Okay, so let's do this. We got 1098 times S, which we just said was negative L plus 20, plus 2798L, and that equals 355.60. And now we're going to continue to simplify this until we get L alone. So we distribute the 1098. So we get negative L times 1098. And we get 1098 times 20. So in this case, 10.98 times 20 equals 219.60. So we get plus 219.60. Now bring the 2798L down, so plus 2798L equals 355.60. We have some like terms here that we can combine. So this has an L. And I don't know why I wrote it like that. Negative L 1098. Negative 1098L. We got negative 1098L, and we got 2798L. So we would do negative 1098 plus 2798. We get 17. So we get 17L plus 219.60 equals 355.60. Continue to solve for L, meaning that we can subtract 219.60 on both sides. So 355 0.60 minus 219.60, we get 136. So this is going to cancel out. We get 17L equals 136. And now we can divide both sides by 17. So 136 divided by 17 gives us L equals 8. Let's go back to the question. It did ask how many large candles that we're selling, so we know that's 8. If it was asking for small, all we would need to do is take 8 and substitute it into L. -8 plus 20. So that means they sold 12 small candles. But this one was looking for large, so we're done. Question 11, which representations are functions? Okay, so remembering that a function means every input, usually the input is x, has only one output, which is usually y, or also sometimes f of x. Okay, so let's look at number 1. Input is x, output is y. We can see that the input of 2 has 2 different outputs. So one input 2, 2 outputs of 6, and -6. And what I looked for here is just, are the x's, are they repeating? So in this case, yeah, 2 repeats in the x, so it's not 1, meaning that already we can eliminate option choice 1. Okay, let's look at 2. Again, are any of the x's repeating? So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No. So since the x's don't repeat, one x cannot have more than one y, meaning that 2 is an answer choice. Meaning that we can automatically get rid of 3 and 4. So our choice is 2. Now, just to look at the other ones really quick, we know that 3 is not a function because it fails the vertical line test. The vertical line test says if you draw a vertical line through, it crosses our function twice, meaning that this is not a function. And the equation for 4, so the equation for 4 is a line, meaning that this is a function, but we know that because it's in the answer choice. Okay, and this will be the last one we do. If f of x equals the square root of 2x plus 3 divided by 6x minus 5, then what is the value of the function when the input is 1/2? So we know that the input is 1/2, meaning that we need to substitute that into these x's here. So it will be helpful to write this out first, but this is another one that can be a calculator question. So you would have 2 times x plus 3 with the square root divided by 6 times x minus 5. And in those parentheses, that's where your 1/2 will go. If you didn't want to use the calculator, you could start simplifying right from here, which is probably what I would do. So at the top here, 2 times 1/2 is just going to leave you with 1. And 6 times 1/2 is going to leave you with 3. So now that we know that, we could still put the plus 3 under the square root divided by 3 minus 5. We know that 1 plus 3 is 4. So we're going to get the square root of 4 divided by 3 minus 5 is negative 2. The square root of 4 is positive 2. So 2 divided by negative 2, we're going to get negative 1. And that is option choice 3. Okay, so that was questions 1 through 12 of the August 2015 Algebra 1 Regents.